and you know, is your pastor, your feeder, you you look at that individual and you kind of want to know some kind of background about them, and what gives them endorsement, you know, to where they can speak and say certain things. So a lot of times when you go into the Christian church and they give you their whole schooling, you know, I got this kind of schooling, I went to this kind of school, and all these religious organizations, they try to get a school, and people get letters behind their names, and they go to these seminaries and they do all this studying in the seminaries. But the people who started the seminary and all of those who run the education programs when it comes to religious studies, they're all coming out of the playbook of the Roman religion and the Greek philosophy. That's where it comes from. Greek philosophy, the Roman religion, and we call it Christianity. And most of us, and I'm speaking rhetorically, and everybody who's listening, most of us cannot pull out of that. We can't pull out of that because that's all we know. You know, how do I unlearn what I've been taught all my life? How do I unlearn that? You know, and a lot of us, we just can't do that. And if it's something that well, man, this is somewhat new, and then there's fear that creeps in, and then you go back to your default system. And that's just how we do a lot of times. But when you get an understanding of who, you know, Yahusha is, who his father is, Yahuwah, who his whole calling from the book, anybody that starts off reading this book from Matthew or the book of Acts or Romans or whatever, or even the book of Psalms, if you start off reading from there, then you've already missed it. You're going to be skewed. Your whole thing is going to be skewed. And so it's difficult in this day. And why are you saying all that? Because it's difficult in this day, and many people are going to lose. I'm going to say it. Many people are going to lose because of that default system and what they can't pull away from. They gravitate to it. And that is going to cause a lot of people to lose out in the end. You know, some people should be saying, well, I want to be, well, you know how we would say it? I want to be saved, right? What must I? Hey, I don't care. I just don't want to be lost. You know, tell me about this book. Teach the book to me. I want to read the book. I just don't want to be lost. You know, but when we look at this nation that we're in, and they say we're under one God, right? And they have all of these, you know, even at I don't know if anybody watched the inauguration and all the hoopla and everything behind it, and even that Bishop Episcopal that did the service that they went to, you know, that is more of a what do you call that, gender free or in that kind of mindset, you know, and so. And that's who so they put these people up in front of you, and they make you think, you know, all of this stuff is acceptable with the Most High. The Most High looks down, those ain't my people. I have not called them people. I have not made no covenant with them. All those people, I didn't watch all of it, you know, but picking up snippets here and there. He didn't call none of them people. This whole nation, he hasn't called this nation at all. This nation was set up for the punishment of Yasharel, for the punishment of his people. And why did he have to punish his people? Because they broke covenant and they sinned against him. Yahusha even said it. And this is not really part of my lesson tonight, but I just want to go here, Luke 21 and 24. This is what Yahusha said. This was in the first century. And they shall fall by, talking about Yasharel, talking about the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said, they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. And being led away captive is you're going to be taken against your will. You're not an immigrant. You're not a explorer. You're not going out to discover all this land, because by this time Yasharel had already been scattered. And how do we know that? How do we know at the time when Yahushua's given this discord here towards the end of his life before he was crucified? How many of us know that Yasharel had already been scattered? There's a verse out there. Yeah, they had already been scattered, and we can prove that. But at this time, even when he said this, Yasharel had been scattered. They had been going through one punishment after another, one captivity after another. So they were led away captive into all nations. They were taken out of their homeland against their will. And he says, Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And this is where we are at the end of the Gentile age, is where we are. The time of the fulfillment of the Gentiles is about where we are. And so where are you? If we are, and you can look around and you can see what's going on, the nations and the forming of nations, even you don't have to look too far. Just look at this nation and look what's happening here. And you've heard me say it before. You better put your helmet on, put the strap on, and tighten them, get ready, because this is going to be a difficult time ahead. And a lot of people are going to go back to their default system. When they see a lot of this stuff starts to break down and some of this stuff being revealed and who this nation is and stuff, a lot of people, because they don't have enough knowledge and understanding, they're going to go back. Some of those who are starting to learn of Torah and the teaching of it, and then all of a sudden, when your world is really shaken, the whole foundation of your world is really shaken, and you have some things that you just don't know, I'm just not totally convinced of something, what's going to happen? You're going to go back to the default. You're going to go right back to the default system. And so that's what we're trying to do in this hour, is to make sure you are on solid footing, that you are on the solid rock. And what did he say in the book of Acts? Make your calling and your election sure. You better make it sure. I'm solid. Hey, I'm solid. I'm in this. I know for a fact. Anybody here that's sitting here, and those who are listening online, does anybody have any doubt? Did anybody have any doubts? Are you moving in full faith, or is there maybe some might have a little doubt? I don't know. Maybe. You know how sometimes we say maybe. Or are you solid? Are you 100, or what do they call it, a buck? I mean, are you 100% sure? Because it says make your calling and your election sure. And so you have to have it in your heart and in your mind. You have to have it, because if you don't, when we go through what we have to go through in this year and leading up into 26 and some of the things that, y'all see how this year started out, right? Huh? Yeah, the Roman calendar, the Roman calendar year. Yeah, not on the Hebrew calendar, but on the Roman Greek calendar. Y'all see how it started out? A guy was in a truck and ran through a crowd. Where was that? New Orleans. Somebody blew up a Tesla in front of Trump Towers in Vegas, right? Then you had the fires in California. I think that's still going on too. And this is the what's today? 22nd day in January. 22nd day. So there's some things that have already kicked this year off. And if you listen to some of the changes that are coming, there's kind of a lot of chaos in some of these larger cities. Why is there a lot of chaos in these larger cities? Anybody know? Why there's people kind of, a lot of chaos? And, Yeah, I mean, what is he? What is he? Who is he rounding up? Huh? Yeah, I mean, Chicago and New York, some of these other places. I mean, it's going to be crazy, y'all. I'm telling y'all, you better really tighten up. Yeah, he said he was going to do it, but then you start to see it actually play out because see, a lot of people don't. Well, he's all talk. Okay, okay, you gonna see if he's all talk or not. They're finding out that he's not. And then some of these other world leaders or nations. I mean, the things he said about Canada, about Mexico, and Greenland, and I mean, he's talking big. Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. Greenland, that's going to be a part of America. Canada, 51st state. I mean, when he says that, it's not that he ain't going to try to do it. He's going to try. He's going to go after it. And there's a lot of world leaders that don't like his prowess. They don't like that, man. They're used to America being more timid and working behind the scenes. Bloodied. Oh well, yeah. His grandfather was, yeah, yeah, because his grandfather immigrated from Germany. His grandfather. So, he's his family. They've only been here 2-3 generations. And you got some of us. We can go back. Some of our family, we can go back. Man, y'all brought us over here 400 years ago. you know, and he just comes over here. His grandfather migrated over here, and look where they're at. Running this country, and so there's a lot of things that's going on, and we're going to have to really prepare ourselves. And yes, somebody put in the chat the weather, because now we got a little bit of snow today, but where did most of the snow go? South. It was snowing in New Orleans, Florida, getting snow. Texas, Houston, Texas got snow. I mean, all that snow, and we got cold. It was cold there, and we're getting a little dusting today, but we haven't had the normal snowfall that we normally get. We just haven't had it. Not that it ain't coming. I don't know. I don't want to say something, all of a sudden, here comes a front full of snow, But we haven't got our normal snowfall, at least yet. But that could change. But there's a lot of things going on around the country and around the world, and so what I'm trying to tell everybody is, you got to get your footing. You got to make sure you're solid. You got to make sure you're rooted, and it even talks about being rooted and grounded, in truth. And because if there's any doubt or any uncertainty, you're going to go back to the default. You're going to go back there. And then some people might say, well, what's wrong with that? But when you look at what they call Christianity today, it's getting worse, worse, and worse. I mean, and they're getting bold about it. They're getting bold about it. Homosexuality and transgenderism and all the paganism that is in it. I mean, they're getting bold about it. And so we should be praying. And I know I pray for our brothers and sisters and those in leadership positions, that the Most High Yah will open up their understanding. I ain't against them. We got brothers and sisters, over there on the other side. I'm not against them. I pray that Most High Yah open their understanding. Because if you think you can play around with paganism and still make it into the kingdom, then the devil's got you deceived. If you think that if you think you can go against the Torah and the teachings of the Torah, then they've got you deceived. They've got you deceived. And there's a lot of things we can say about that, but I want to go to Matthew 7 and verse number 12. Start here, Matthew 7 and 12. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. This is called what? The golden rule. This is called the golden rule. The golden rule is, therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Now, I think if you were drowning and your life was, at stake, you would want somebody to try to save you and throw out the lifeline. And because if I'm about ready to lose my life or my breath, the breath of life or whatever, and I see my brother, my sister, and you got a oxygen mask or whatever, we make eye contact, and you can see I can't breathe, and you got a oxygen mask there. I'm looking at you like, throw it out, give it to me, because if it was you and I had it, I would do that for you. And so how we treat one another, in reality, when you look at this, if you do this, you're keeping the law. If you do this, you're keeping the law. For this is the law and the prophets. So when you talk about the golden rule, and you talk about doing unto others as you would have them to do unto you, if you can't keep that, then you can't keep the golden rule of the law. If you can't keep that, you're not keeping the golden rule of the law. And so how you treat your brother or sister, how you treat your neighbor, is how you treat who? The Most High. That's how you treat the Most High. So if you despise a brother or a sister that's doing everything they can to make it, that would give you the shirt off their back or help you out, do whatever they can for you, that wouldn't want to see you suffer, and they would just do whatever they can for you within reason. You know what I'm saying? Within reason. They're doing everything they can for you. And you turn around and kick dirt at them. You might think you're doing it to that individual, but actually you're doing it to the Most High. You're doing it to the Most High. And so our relationship with one another is vital as we go forward. Because when this thing shakes out, you're going to need a community. You're going to need, those of the same faith. You're going to need somebody that is going to be there for you. And somebody might have to depend on you. Somebody might have to depend on you. But if I can't love you, then I can't love Elohim. I can't love the Most High. And if I can't love the Most High, you don't love his son, because his son came from him. So we have to have these strong, healthy relationships within Yasharel, within the body of Yahusha. And one of the critical things about it is we are to be the light of the world. Now in the world, and we've come out of some rough situations and stuff, but a lot of times when you look into the world and everything, there's one word that I see that kind of sums a lot of it up. When I look at the world and everything and it's survival. People are just trying to survive. It's a matter of survival. And if it's kill or be killed, well, I'm going to kill you first if my life is threatened, or if it's, comes down to the last piece of bread, hey, see you. That a lot of times in the world, that's our mindset, because it's a matter of survival. I got to survive. But when you look at, well, a good example is Shaul. In the 9th chapter of Romans, Shaul said that he would rather be a curse of the Mashiach. For who? For his brethren according to the flesh. So that is a measure of love for his brothers and sisters that we don't see. Because and we've heard it before in the past, well, I don't know about that one. How Shaul felt. I'm not quite sure about that, because if y'all don't want to be saved, and y'all want to, be cursed and go to hell, well, then y'all go on with your bad self. Isn't that what we say? Well, go on with your bad self. But his love for his brothers, for those of the flesh, was like, hey, y'all, hey, come on, man, we got to get this right. I would rather be accursed from the Mashiach if that means you're going to be saved, if that means you're going to make it. How many of us can say that, especially in our dealings with one another? The way we interact, the way we socialize, the way we receive one another, the way we talk to one another. How do we? Is that a part of it? Is that anybody? Is that a part of your relationship with anybody in the faith, that you would rather them make it and you miss it? Anybody feel that way? You'd rather be accursed for the Mashiach so your brothers can make it? Anybody feel like that? No. Well, Rachel, I said, oh man, I don't think no. But that's a tough one. That's a tough one. But see, when we talk about the law and the prophets, and we talk about who he wanted Yasharel to be, the model nation to the world. Out of all these nations, I've chose you. He could have chose somebody else easily. He could have chose somebody else. But he said, no, Abraham, your seed. See, this is the ones I'm going to choose. And then he said, as a nation, they were supposed to be the light. And so if you are rejecting Torah and the law and the prophets, you can't be a light to the world. And he lays it out so simple. It's as simple as loving your neighbor. What? It's that simple. It's that simple. But we can't grasp it. A lot of times we can't grasp it. And the reason why is because we allow this to get in the way. We allow flesh to step in. We allow pride and arrogance to step in. We allow certain prejudices to step in that keeps us from, I can't love them like that. I'm just not cut like that. And we allow a lot of things to come in between. As an assembly here, when we're going to be judged as an assembly, you're going to be judged as an individual, you're going to be judged as an assembly. And then I've got to say something about all of those that I fed. You're the feeder. I'm supposed to feed with what? Knowledge and I ain't a dictator. I don't run your houses. I feed with knowledge and understanding. And I have to give an account for that. And everybody that's within that, not only do you have to give an account for yourself, you got to give an account for yourself. So we ought to be, by now, we ought to be the ones where we're just drawing and attracting people, because after 10, 20, 30 years, you think we got something locked down, right? I got a pretty solid footing somewhere. Instead of having to deal with some of the same things over and over again because of flesh. Because those who, how does he say, those who live after the flesh, those who mind the things of the flesh, you can't what? You can't please them. You can't. So if I have pride, I can't please them. If I think I'm better than anybody else, I can't please them. If I can't treat these young brothers, these brothers and sisters, if I can't treat all y'all the same, then I can't keep this. James? It's in James. He says, if you show, he says, all partiality, right? Let's get, that's in James, right? James chapter, is that 1 or 2? I think it's 2. Chapter 2, and because he talks about somebody that comes in with the gold ring and goodly apparel, and then you have the poor man and the vile raiment, and you have respect unto the one who has the gold ring and the goodly apparel, and that's easy for us to do. And he says, He says you are partial, right? You're showing partiality. Are you, in verse number 4, are you not then partial in yourselves? Because he goes on to say, all partiality is sin. And that's in this chapter 2, right? I thought it was. Yeah, you got the royal law, which is close to the golden rule, right? Do unto others, you have them do unto you. Then you have the royal law, which is love thy neighbor as thyself, and all of that is under the law. But if you have respect of persons, ye commit sin, and are convinced of the law as what? Transgressors. So if you have respect to persons, if you have any kind of partiality, if I have, we got these young brothers here. So if I show partiality to Jaden and not Robert, and my whole association with them, I'm showing favor to one or the other. If I do that, what have I done? I transgressed. That's a sin. See, we don't look at. See, we tend to treat certain folks. Well, I like this family, but I don't like this family as much. So I'm going to treat this family better than I'm going to treat this family. Well, if you do that, you've just committed sin. And it says you're convinced of the law as a what? As a transgressor. Because I allow flesh to get in the way. But if you have respect, this is verse number 9. But if you have respect to persons, ye commit sin and are convinced of the law as transgressors. For whosoever shall keep the whole law yet offend in one, he is guilty of law of all, and he's called a transgressor. So if you keep, let's say I keep 9 of the 10 commandments, but I break one commandment, I'm considered a transgressor of the law. Just by breaking one commandment. Because we would sing that song years ago, 99 and a half won't do, but yet you don't think I don't have to keep all the commandments. Well, you just sang that song, and you don't feel like you have to keep all the commandments. But it's important for us, and I'm trying to emphasize this because things are going to get tough. They're going to get tough. And we are going to need one another. But if we can't get along with one another, and we show partiality to one another, then actually you're a transgressor. And then you got to give an account for that. You're going to have to give account for that. Because he goes on to say in verse number 11, for he that said, do not commit adultery. He also said, what? Do not kill. Now, if thou commit no adultery, I'm not adulterer, I'm not committing adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a what? Transgressor of the law. That's why he said, if you offend in one point, when he says you're guilty of all, because if you offend in one point, that means you're a transgressor. If you offend in one point, wait a minute, you mean Elohim is that exacting that I'm going to stand trial on one point as a transgressor on one point? Yeah. In fact, you could keep 9 but leave out and transgress commandment number 9, which is what? What's commandment number 9? Don't bear false witness, which means what? You better not be lying. Don't bear false witness. So you're asked a question and you're working things out and you bear false witness. Then you're called a lawbreaker. I ain't no lawbreaker. I kept all the commandments. But you bore false witness. You lied. Yeah, but that doesn't make me a lawbreaker. According to this book, it does. According to El Elyon, it does. So James goes on to tell us, I think it's in chapter 1, he tells us that we should not what? He tells us do not, I think it's in chapter 1. James tells us, because Maury Gerard always like to say this, do not err, my dear brother. Do not err, my dear brother. So, how do we rest in the fact that, and I'm going to go to Romans chapter 2 and start at verse number 12. And then we're going to go to Romans chapter 3. But Romans chapter 2, starting at verse number 12. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. So there ain't no escape. Because you know, you got some people that say, well, that law was for Yasharel. That's for y'all. That's your law. We're going to stay over here. We're going to live. We're another nation. We're going to live the way we want to. So he says, for many as have sinned without the law, you're going to perish. Because not only does the law, because remember the weightier matters of the law. What's the weightier matters of the law? Judgment, mercy, faith. That's the weightier matter of the law. Judgment, mercy, and faith. So when I know that there's judgment in the law, I also know that there is mercy in the law. I know there's mercy. And we see it displayed in the Torah. We read through the Torah. We see where he shows a lot of mercy. He showed a lot of mercy to the nation Yasharel. He showed a lot of mercy to individuals in Yasharel. He also displayed the faith that is in Yasharel, that is a part of the law. For not the hearers of the law are justified before Elohim, but who's going to be justified before Elohim? But the doers of the law shall be justified. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves. So if you have some people who, well, they're not Israelites, but Israelites are the light of the world, right? And so the Israelites are displaying, you know, just we can go through a lot of different items, but just two of the things we talked about today. So the nation of Israel is displaying the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. For this is all the law and the prophets. So Yasharel should be displaying that. Well, other nations see it and say, hey, that's pretty good. That, man, because it says in Deuteronomy, if we keep the we keep the law, other nations are going to say, this is a wise and understanding people. That's what it says. If we keep his Torah, this is a wise and understanding people. So when they see us keeping the golden rule, and then they start to do the golden rule, say, you guys are on to something. You guys are on to something. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. In the day when Elohim shall judge the secrets of men by Yahushua Mashiach according to my gospel, and here's his own gospel, behold, thou art a Yehudi and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of Elohim, and knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law. Right? Because he's going to get into some deep stuff here, but just listen to this, and we're going to go to the first chapter of Timothy, 1 Timothy, first chapter. But I'm going to read this again. Behold, thou art called a Yehudi, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of Elohim, and knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law. Okay? Now, we're going to come back to 2:18, but let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 1, and I want to start at verse number 8. Because they were instructed out of the law. So who has to be instructed out of the law? Here it goes. But we know that the law is good if a man use it lawfully. Because the law is going to give us instructions on how to live. And it teaches us how to live as a community and as a nation, as a community. Remember the golden rule, and what's the other rule we looked at? The royal law, right? And the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And the royal law is what? Love thy neighbor as thyself. We've seen that. For we know the law is good if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man. How many of us came out of the womb righteous? Because King Daud says, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in what? Sin did my mother conceive me. The only ones that I know that came out righteous, Yahusha's one, and John the Baptist, Yochanan the Immerser, and who else? Huh? Enoch, it doesn't really say he came out of the womb like that, but Jeremiah, because he says, I knew you in your mother's womb. Or he said, I chose you, or I knew you. We'd have to look at it in the first chapter of Jeremiah, but it's one of those where he was selected in his mother's womb. But for us to come out righteous, doing right thing and righteous, you don't see that. Come on, y'all. Y'all don't see it in Yasharel. You don't see it. Not only in Yasharel, you don't see it in no nations. These kids come out, they ain't coming out righteous. And the reason why is because the seed or the bloodline is tainted with sin. unless Yah does something to intermediate in the womb, everybody comes out, unrighteous. But for the lawless and disobedient, this is what the instructions of the law, that, like he was saying, the instructions of the law, it's for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers. All of the instructions of the law is for them. For whoremongers and for them that defile themselves with mankind. For men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons. And that's commandment number 9. You can go through the commandments. Perjured persons. And then he drops this in there. And if there be any other thing that is contrary. That could be a lot of things right there. That could be anybody that is. Have you ever ran into somebody contrary? I mean, have you know anybody that it doesn't matter what you do, they're always it's never good enough. It's something's wrong all the time. Just it ain't right. Just well, what is it? I'm trying to be upright and perfect with you. What is it? But it's always somebody that's always contrary. Maybe you guys don't know anybody that's contrary to you. And you try to give them, I don't want to give you no reason to be contrary with me, but you're contrary. He says here, anything that is contrary to sound doctrine. And that kind of opens it up, doesn't it? Because it's almost like it could be opinionated. When it could be you're not trying to be contrary, but somebody else looks at it as being contrary. And that's why a lot of times in Yasharel, they would take people before the judges. And it wouldn't be just one person. They would take people to the judges. Or though you ever heard that saying? They sat in the gate. They're in that city, but they sat in the gate. These were the judges over that city. They would sit in the gate. And so a lot of times things went to them because how many witnesses are you supposed to have? 2 to 3 witnesses. So if you don't got 2 or 3 witnesses, so there was a lot of things that went before the judges. But he kind of leaves it open up when he says anything that's contrary to sound doctrine. Now, I'm trying to teach sound doctrine, but you have a problem with it. So what is the problem with sound doctrine? Because in the law, a lot of times in the law, it's clear cut. There's no gray area. You're on this side, you're good. You're on this side, you're gonna lose out, you're bad. No, there's no gray area with it. And that's how he wants to be with us. He don't want no middle gray area. Because he says, I would that you would be hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'm just going to spew you out. I mean, get on this side or that side. What side are you on? And didn't Moses say that? Didn't he say that to the children of Israel? He said, who's on Yahuwah's side? You want to know who's on Yahuwah's side? Stand with me. Yeah, he said, we're gonna divide this thing. Ain't no in the middle. Well, I'm kind of with the people. I'm kind of with Moses. No, it's clear cut. Either you in or you out. Either you on Yah's side or you're not. And it wasn't no. But here, when he talks about sound doctrine, it's what is the sound doctrine? What is the sound doctrine? And that's when a lot of your teachers and your mores, that's when they would come up with a lot of things that I don't have book, chapter, or verse. Have y'all ever heard that? I don't have book, chapter, or verse, but I think this is what is right for us or for you. And a lot of times it could be good advice. Because I would say this, anything that's going to keep you in close relationship with El Elyon and Yahusha, if it's going to keep me in the close relationship with them, then that's what I want to embrace. That's what I want to do. Something that's going to cause me to drift or bring any doubt in my mind, I can't have that. I'm sorry. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if it's going to hit me the wrong way, land on me the wrong way, and there's some kind of doubt or anything like that, I don't want to have it. And so a lot of times your mores, your teachers, your pastors say, well, I don't have book, chapter, or verse, but I think this is what is good for you. And Shaul said that in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. He says, this is not a commandment of Yah, but because of, the position that he had, and he was selected to feed the Gentiles, he said, I think that you should do this. But Shaul didn't want folks, if you wasn't married, he says, don't get married. But Shaul, that was 2,000 years ago. If everybody lived by that, then many of us wouldn't even be here. We just wouldn't be here. But the reason why he said that was because he thought the return of Yahusha was imminent in his lifetime. He thought it was in his lifetime. And then we see when he wrote the letter to the Thessalonians, he realized it's not going to happen in my day. It's just not going to happen. But that wasn't till later on, because he thought it was imminent in his lifetime. So he said, if you're single, stay single. If you were married and you had a divorce, stay single, because you could do more for Yahusha being single than you can for Yahusha if you were married. But that we have to understand the reason why he would say those things. So anything that's contrary to sound doctrine. Now let's go back to Romans 2, and we were on verse 18. Any questions or comments? And knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and are confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness. Because the covenant was given to Yasharel. They were instructed out of the Torah, right? Covenant was given to them to be the light of the world and a light unto the Gentiles. An instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth in the law. Thou therefore, so Shaul was, this is verse number 21, Shaul was not anti-law like some people like to lead you to believe, that Shaul was against the law and that he was not a preacher of the law. That's not true. That's not true. But that's the commentary of people who were heathens and Gentiles. That's their commentary. Anybody knows why that was their commentary on this? Anybody knows why? Anybody want to add to that? Why was it the Greek philosophers and the Roman philosophers, because most of the Romans, they got their understanding from the Greek philosophers, really. In fact, we're still influenced by the Greeks a lot. We're still influenced by the Greeks a lot in this day and time. Where do you see a lot of the Greek philosophy? Where do you see a lot of it? When you go to schools. When you go to schools, they indoctrinate you with that Greek philosophy, and they get our sons and our daughters hooked into those fraternities and what is it? Sororities. And it's all rooted in Greek. It's all rooted in the Greek philosophy. And so they still have, as old as that empire was, because it was before the Roman Empire, it still has influence today. It still does. But the Greeks and the Romans, they despised those Israelites' law book. They didn't like it. So that's why their commentary on it is, we don't need that. We don't need that law. They were the anti-law. So when Paul and the other ones went off the scene and they began to commentary on their writings and they wrote the Greek and everything, they put their stamp and their influence in it. And so you have a lot of us today thinking there is no law. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because the commentary actually was not rooted in the instructions that, like he says here, we're being instructed in the law, but it's not rooted in that because they didn't like it. They didn't want it. I don't want your law. We ain't under no law. You know, your Messiah freed us from that. And we still believe it today. But where there's no law, there's no what? If we take away the law, we take away transgressions. If I do away with the law, there's no transgression. That means you can do whatever you want to do. That's why homosexuality is accepted. Transgenderism, it's all over. It's all over the place. All it's accepted. Because they say, well, hey, we ain't under the law. We under grace. We can do whatever we want to do. And I say those two, but there's more sins that they allow. I mean, that's anti-Torah. And a lot of it is idolatry and paganism. But listen to what he says here in verse number 21. Thou therefore that teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? All you mores, moras, rahas, zakins, everybody that is teaching, not only are you teaching other people, but you're what? Teaching yourself. You teaching yourself. I'm teaching myself. That's why he says it's a two-edged sword, right? Because it cuts both ways. It might be cutting you, cutting me. Nobody's exempt. Not the moray, they ain't exempt. The same sword that you use to cut somebody else, that same sword is going to be used to cut you. So he says, don't you teach yourself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, does thou steal? Which is commandment number 8. Commandment number 8, thou should not steal. So notice now, he's in the he's teaching the commandments. Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, does thou commit adultery? That's number 7. For people who think that, hey, I ain't under no commandment. Shaul was. He taught it. Thou that abhorrest idols, because Abba Yah was against idolatry. He says, I ain't sharing my glory with nobody. They took the Ark of the Covenant, them Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant and put it by their god, Dagon. And the next day they went in there and Dagon was bowed before the Ark of the Covenant. So they set him back up. They went in the next day. Not only was he bowed, but his head was cut off and his hands was cut off. They said, you got to get the ark out of here. You got to get the ark out of here. Because he said he hates idolatry. All these other paganism, all these guys, they had all kinds. Mithra was a god. Astarte was a god. They use different names today. They use different names. We get that out of our Hebrew nugget. They use different names, but it's the same thing. He hates that, especially with his people, because he says, I've chosen you. I made a covenant with you. I'm your Elohim. And he says, my glory, I ain't giving it to nobody else. So you mean you're teaching the first and the second commandment, maybe the third commandment? Because usually in the Roman religion, they'll tell you, well, you can't have idolatry, you know. But yet they're full of idolatry. But if somebody teaches against idolatry, let's say you're standing up there on the first day of the week in the steeple, and you're standing up there and you're teaching against idolatry. Y'all know we got one God. That's all we got is one. Ain't no other God but him. And they going all out like that. And then when the end of the year comes, they got lights. They got Christmas trees. They got reindeer. They got all this stuff up there. And you go, wait a minute, time out. Weren't you telling us that idolatry is a sin? But look what you're doing. And they do it all the time. They do it all the time. So he says here, he says, thou that abhorrest idols, does thou commit sacrilege? That is sacrilege to do that. To talk about, they might even quote, because I heard it before, Deuteronomy 7:4, hear, O Israel, Yahuwah our Elohim is one Yah. I heard that over there on the other side. I heard that a lot. But then we had Easter egg hunts. We did. On Saturday night, we would get eggs. We would get that. We'd boil them eggs. We'd have those little things on the end of them after they was boiled. We would paint them. We did. I don't know about y'all, but in our house we did. And we had Easter egg hunts after they said, Hear, O Israel, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And then you do that. But see, we're holy. That's sacrilege. We committed sacrilege, but nobody talked about it because you can't say nothing against the leader. You get put out. You get excommunicated, or you get, what is that? You can't speak a word up in here. You can come up in here, but you can't open your mouth. They silence you. That's what I meant to say. They would silence you or excommunicate you, but commit sacrilege. And I mean, sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about it, but the truth is the truth, because a lot of times the truth is uncomfortable. Because the truth don't pet your flesh. They don't do it. That's one thing about Abba Yah. He said, I ain't going to pet your flesh. I'm going to instruct you, and hopefully my law and stuff will kill that flesh. It'll kill that flesh. It's a tough one here. For the name of Elohim, or the name of Yahuwah, is what? You're blaspheming my name among the Gentiles. So if you want to disgrace Yahuwah Elohim, then teach the law and then go break it. It's hypocrisy. That's and it's also apostasy too. You can't teach righteousness is in the law and teach all this righteousness and then go out and break it. That's why he said, someone who teaches, what are you doing? You don't thou teach who? We just read it. You thou that teaches, you teach yourself. So if somebody is teaching against idolatry and then turn around and commit idolatry, he says, you done blaspheme me before the Gentiles. Now, because we got to be careful, because Yahusha said, every sin will be forgiven. You speak against the Son of Man, and I'll forgive you for that. Because they were calling the Son of Man what? In that Beelzebub. And he says, I'll forgive you for that. You're calling me Lord of the Flies. I'll forgive you for that. He says, you can speak against me, the Son of Man, it'll be forgiven. But if you speak against the Ruach, that's not going to be forgiven. And so he says here, my name The name of Elohim is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. So we have to be extremely careful. If we're teaching the 10 Commandments, you better be living the 10 Commandments. Or don't teach it. I couldn't teach that. And he said, you're right, because you ain't living it. If you teach the 10 Commandments, you keep teaching the law, you better keep it. Because if you're not keeping it, then you're blaspheming his name. And we have to be careful because we don't want to blaspheme his name. We're going to come back here. I don't have much time. I want to go to Isaiah chapter 42, I think it's 24. No, that's not it. I think it's further up here in 42 because he talks about every day his name is blasphemed. Okay. Let me see. Is it Isaiah 52? Yep. Yeah. Isaiah 52, verse 5 and 6. Now, therefore, what have I here, saith Yahuwah, that my people is taken away for naught. They that rule over them make them to howl, saith Yahuwah. And my name continually, every day, is blasphemed. Every day, his people it says here, and my name continually every day is blasphemed. And the ones who would blaspheme him would be his own people. Now, he does talk about in this chapter here, because he does talk about how his people were brought into captivity by other nations. But notice what it says, my people are taken away for naught. They that rule over them make them to howl. So, Yasharel, who are in captivity, how can those who rule over them make them howl and blaspheme the name of Yahuwah? How can somebody who holds you captive make you blaspheme his name? What those other nations believe. Because see, wherever Yasharel was, they still had the commitment, the commitment of Torah. No matter where they were supposed to. But when you read about Yasharel and all these different captivities, a lot of times they would become like those nations. And we see that in the time of our Messiah, and it was called Hellenist. And Hellenist was not a Greek, it was an Israelite living and taking on the culture of the Greeks, and they were called Hellenists. And so when they got into the Greek culture and the Greek philosophy, because even, I see some simple forms of it when we were never given our Father's name. I was never taught Yod, He, Ud, He. Never taught it. I taught myself, but I was never taught Yod, He, Ud, He. So I never used his name. And that's against the commandments. Because the third commandment was, don't make my name useless. We were lawbreakers and didn't realize it. We didn't realize it. He says here, they that rule over them make them to howl, saith Yahuwah, and my name continually every day is blasphemed. He goes on to say in verse number 6, therefore my people shall know my name. If you are his people, you know his name. So people who don't, you can call yourself, I'm saved, sanctified, I'm a golden Christian. If you don't know his name, you're not his people. He says, my people shall know my name. Therefore, they shall know in that day that I am he that doth speak. Behold, it is I. And so we know, see, if you don't know his name, then you're not going to know the Son's name. If you don't know his name, you're not going to know the Son's name. And that's why Yahusha said, that's why he says this in Yahuchanan 5:43. That's why he says this, I come in my Abba's name, and ye receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. So if we don't know the Father's name, we're not going to know the Son's name. But if they give us another name, we're going to receive that. Because we don't know any difference. I don't know any difference. I only know what you teach me. You don't teach me, I don't know. And so we receive another name, and we receive it easily because we don't know our Father's name. But if I would have known my Father's name, Yod-He, Ud-He, and I know his Son came in his name, then his Son's name has to be like his Father's name. And I told that lie, and I've asked for forgiveness, but I told that lie, that the Father's name was J-E-S-U-S. That is not true. That is not true. You will not find J-E-S-U-S in Torah anywhere. You won't find it. It was a name that was translated from the Greeks into Latin, from the Greek into Latin, and then from the Latin into English. And that's not our Father's name. But I said it. I said it. And you know how I said it? Because in Matthew 28:19, where it says, right? Go ye into all the world, teaching all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father. And I would say the Father's name's got to be J-E-S-U-S. In the name of the Son. Because, and you know what? I would use this verse. I come in my Father's name. So if the Son's name is J-E-S-U-S, the Father's name got to be J-E-S-U-S. That's not true. That was not, because originally he says, you immerse them in my name. Because that's the name of redemption. And he came in his Father's name. So Yod-He, Ud-He is Yahuwah. Yod-He, U, Shin, Ayin is Yahu saves, or Yahu delivers. That's what his name means. Yahu delivers. Yahusha, Yahu saves. That's what it means. But when you look at this, it's difficult for a lot of people to receive because of the way we've been taught. And so just try to impress some things upon us, because as the turbulence comes and things get tough, I know a lot of people are going to snap back. People are going to snap back. But you heard me say the other day, keep your paper, your Bibles with the letters and printed Bible. Keep your printed Bibles. I got a number of them. Keep your printed Bibles, because they can make, in this electronic thing, they can make some mistakes, especially once people start getting more aware and everything. They can make some mistakes in here. The Torah, there's no mistakes in Torah, but in this electronic, if we're not careful, they can switch some things up. So that's why you always got to go back. I'm going back to the book. I got an original 1611. King James. I got one. I keep it at home. It's in a box. I keep it there. And I refer to it every once in a while. I'll refer to it. But you won't see no Jesus in there. But he says, I come in my Father's name, and you receive him not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. And that's why Yahuwah says, man, these folks, they ruling over my people, and they're making them howl, and my name is blasphemy every day. But he says, but my people, they're going to know my name. And they're going to know in that day, behold, it is I. It is I that is speaking unto you, because I know my Father's name. If I know my Father's name, I've got to hear his voice. I got to hear his voice. And I hear his voice through his Son. Because his Son said, I ain't bringing nothing new. I only speak what I hear from Abba. That's what he speaks. And it says in Hebrews 1 and 2, Elohim, who at sundry times and divers manners spake unto our fathers by the prophets, have in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. So if you want to hear the voice of Yah, you better listen to his Son. And his Son would never turn you away. So this is where we finished up, and that's in Romans chapter 2. And I think it was verse number 24. For the name of Elohim is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. And so we'll go on. It talks about the circumcision and the uncircumcision. And we'll read through some of this on the Shabbat. Romans chapter 2 and then Romans chapter 3. We'll get through some of that on the Shabbat. Because there's the understanding that the law doesn't justify you, faith does, not the law. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about faith, because that's one of the weightier matters of the law is faith. And then there's a law of faith. There's the law of faith that Shaul talks about, the law of faith. And is there any questions? Any questions out there? Any questions at all? So we'll go through more of this in Romans and chapter 2, chapter 3. We'll touch some of it on the Shabbat, and then also we'll look at some other things. But it's important that we understand that he's already given us instructions. And if you're righteous, you don't have to worry about it. But if you weren't born righteous, then we need the instructions of Torah to teach us, because those who are keeping the Torah, those who are born again and keeping the Torah, are going to be those that's going to inherit the kingdom. And that's one thing, and you'll probably hear me say this again. The covenants that he made with Abraham that we stand to inherit says nothing about going to the Shamayim and living throughout eternity in the Shamayim. You won't find that nowhere in this book. But that's what we believed, because that's what we were taught. So that's what we believed. But when you start to dig into Torah, you start reading Torah, and you understand that if I am the Mashiach, if I'm in the Mashiach, then I'm Abraham's seed and I'm heirs according to the promises. So I get to inherit what he promised Abraham. And so you have to go all the way back to what did he promise Abraham, because that's what we stand to inherit. And when he created Adam, did he create him to die? Did he create him to go to the Shamayim? Did he create him to go to hell? That's not, he didn't create. He created him in his image and his likeness, but their inheritance was Eden and everlasting life. And he says, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And they were given dominion over the stars in heaven. No, they were given dominion over here. So the inheritance for Adam and Eve was all the earth, and they were given eternal life when he created them. It wasn't until they disobeyed. He created them to live here forever. And they had the Garden of Eden, and it was beautiful. And that was their, they had to die because of sin or transgression. When he says, you can have all the, and you heard somebody say before, why didn't they eat out of the tree of life? Because it was right there, you know. But they wanted knowledge of good and evil, and that's when death came in. Because Satan fooled them and said, what did the Most High say? He says, if we eat thereof, we're going to surely die. Ye shall not surely die. But did they die? Oh, they died. They did die. But they weren't supposed to die. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. He didn't create them to perish and to die. He created them to have eternal inheritance and to have all the. So what he promised Abraham was, I'm going to give you all of the earth to inherit the earth. And so we were taught, man, we're going to the Shamayim. But nowhere in here did he promise Abraham, you do good, you're going to go up to the Shamayim. He didn't say that. He says, this is what you stand to inherit. And then in Acts, the first chapter, when they seen Yahusha ascending up, right before he ascended up, they said, are you going to restore the kingdom unto us now? He says, it's not for you to know the time or the season. You just be witnesses. So we're waiting for the kingdom to be established here on earth, where we'll reign as kings and priests and have eternal life. Eternal life. And that's our hope, is to inherit what he had promised Abraham. All right. If there's no questions or comments out there, then we're going to bring this to a close. And we certainly thank you for joining us. And the media team, we do have a couple of ways to give. If you're not physically in the house here, we have the Givelify app and also the Vanco app. Now, some people might say, well, why did you choose Givelify? It's integrated with our accounting system. Vanco and Givelify, it just goes right into our accounting system, which makes things a lot easier for me. And with that being said, those who contributed in the year of 2024, I'm trying to get all those, and you'll get your copy of your contributions throughout the year 2024. And it is commanded of us to give. All right, my time is up. My time is up. It is commanded of us to give. But we can do that later. All right, so we're going to say shalom, shalom to everybody, and come on back on the Shabbat.